Hi, everyone. My name is Natalia, and I'm a VP of Marketing here at Peerbound. And it's my pleasure to welcome you to the Customer Marketing Masterclass. Even though this is a webinar or we're meeting virtually, we still want this to be a community experience. So go ahead, enter the chat, let us know your name, where you work, where you're tuning in from, and please use the chat to ask questions during the sessions, offer advice to any of the other attendees that have questions, and just have fun in there. We welcome all the comments and feedback. You can even connect directly one-on-one with any of the attendees of the webinar today. You can go to the People tab or see who's in the chat and message them directly. So hopefully you can make some connections as well. Just wanted to level set that the agenda for this event came from conducting dozens of interviews with customer marketers and listening to your feedback in CMA communities. Wanted to especially give a shout out to Mary Green and CMA Weekly, where a lot of the insights were gathered on what are the biggest pain points that you are facing today. Um, instead of us just telling you how to solve them, we also gathered the brightest minds in customer and product marketing to answer those questions for you today. So what's in store for today on the agenda? We're going to start with talking about sales adoption. So how do you get sales to actually use the customer proof and how to really make that process a lot smoother? We're also going to talk next about measurement and ROI and how do you communicate the value of customer marketing to leadership. And lastly, obviously, AI is a very hot topic and sometimes a buzzword, but today we're going to dig deeper into how customer marketers specifically can use AI in their tool set. We also have a document section, so check that out. There's some additional articles and sort of helpful content that you can enjoy after the webinar. And hottest question always is this recorded? Yes, we'll send an email of the recording after the event. And if you want to share this event with your peers, please make sure you send them the registration link as everybody needs their own magic link to enter. So it's the same one that you enter today, you will be entering to watch the recording. Okay, so with that, let's get started.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's session. My name is Gareth Pembroke. I lead customer success and operations at Peerbound. And before we get into our chat about sales enablement today, I want to introduce our amazing panelists. Chris Dalton at Clari, and you can see Chris's picture actually behind me, and Alexi Glover at Frank Advocacy. Chris and Alexi would love to hear a little bit more about your roles. And Alexi, why don't you kick us off?
Sure, thank you. Thanks for having me. I'm Alexi. I'm the co-founder of Frank Advocacy. Frank Advocacy is a customer marketing and advocacy consulting agency that I run with my sister, Janelle. And together we lead a team of consultants that help customer marketing and advocacy professionals get shit done.
Amazing. Chris?
And I'm Chris Dalton. I lead our customer marketing and advocacy efforts at Clari. Clari is a platform in the revenue orchestration space.
Awesome. Well, thank you both very much for joining us. And just to set the stage for the webinar today, I just want to outline a little bit of like research that we're seeing in the market. So recent LinkedIn research on the trust in the B2B buying process revealed that recommendations from trusted peers are 3 to 4 times more likely to influence buying decisions than other features or lower prices. And also Gartner released research that said that 65% of sales content actually goes unused in the market. So customer and product marketers obviously are at the forefront in delivering customer proof, but sales adoption has obviously been incredibly tough. And I know everyone kind of has seen that. So despite the fact that we know this is customer proof is a leading sales influencer. So yeah, just to get started, let's address the elephant in the room. Why do you think that 65% of sales content actually goes unused, and what is actually happening on the ground? And Alexi, I'll ask you to start.
Sure. I think enablement is the biggest hurdle that a lot of people face in their roles, but specifically customer marketing and advocacy professionals. From what I see, CMAers often are forced to sort of work as a translator, if you will. So we might have case studies about, I don't know, company A, competitor A, but that's not the language that sales are speaking. They might be looking specifically for a product or a geo or a different way that our content is organized. And so I think that's how we end up in this cycle of being reactive to these one-off requests about a case study with that talks about a customer who wears blue shoes, who lives in Arizona, who uses the product in this very particular way, right? And because I think sales cycles move so quickly now, especially in the tech space, this enablement is the enablement function of customer marketing and advocacy professionals' job is this always on requirement, right? Like we always need to be able to work so quickly. And I think what happens is that your sales reps end up with a deck that works for them, that works for the vast majority of their prospects and or renewals. And it's old content, it's stale content, but it's content that they know how to use. They have a spiel. And so I think that's why the vast majority of the good content ends up sitting unused. But Chris has done a really great job of solving or starting to solve this problem at Clari. So I'm interested to hear what he has to say.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I think like you said, sales moves fast and they're resistant to trying to have complex workflows put upon them where they need to go sort through these different areas in HighSpot to find exactly what they need. If that's how you present your content enablement to sales, then they're going to view it as a nice to have and not a need to have. I think when I speak to sales reps, a lot of them see the value of customer proof and sharing that with their prospects. But if they're confronted with this onerous process to try and find that, then they're just going to leave it unused. And maybe, like Alexi said, your best reps will have that one deck or like that one case study that they just go back to over and over again. But the vast majority of your content will be left gathering dust unless you deliver it to them in a very easy to consume way that gives them no option to just leave it sitting there. And then I also think that we as practitioners focus too much on production-based goals. Most KPIs are focused around create this amount of X case studies each quarter, but then we completely abandon what happens to those case studies after they're created. You put in potentially months of hard work creating this beautiful polished case study, and then it just dies on Google Drive or in HighSpot. And so enablement is just as important, if not more so, to gain all of the value and credibility out of the programs that you're offering and what your worth is to the business. And if you think about it, you could have 50 case studies. If you're lucky enough to build out that huge library, no one may know that exists. But what's more valuable, having that or having 3 case studies that everyone uses and you get value out of that?
Yeah. And Chris, how do you go about building a relationship with your revenue team to actually communicate the value of these materials that you're creating? What has worked for you and what hasn't?
Yeah, I mean, I think you can point to what the best reps are doing. If you see the top enterprise reps using customer proof in deals and it's helping them win deals faster, and you can point to that, then other reps will follow along because they're all incentivized to their commission structures are incentivized to do what works. I also think it's important to listen to how your sales team actually works instead of making assumptions about their workflow. So meeting with sales teams frequently and getting feedback on functionality or programs, rather than just assuming that they want to follow a certain customer reference workflow process, for example. Instead, hearing what would be ideal for them, you may find that some of your assumptions are actually untrue, and you're going to miss out on adoption opportunities if that's the case. So being adaptable and being willing to craft a program that maximizes both adoption and value for the people that you're trying to serve is what's going to lead to success. And then alongside that, go from being a request taker to an insights giver. Instead of being that person on Slack that people just ask you where to go find this case study, I found a lot of value in proactive proof from Peerbound. They didn't pay me to say this. It wasn't even in our prep notes. But I think having that proactive approach to sales, instead of expecting them to ask for what they think they might need, deliver what you know they need based on what they just discussed with their prospect. That's going to give them the best results for them, and it's going to lead to the highest uptake.
Absolutely. Alexi, how about you?
I mean, I think I'm in kind of a unique position because I get the opportunity to sort of like peek behind the curtains of many customer marketing and advocacy programs. And also, I get a lot of people reaching out with sort of like one off questions for advice. And one of the things that I think I see people struggle with a lot is this understanding of what sales needs. Like exactly what Chris was talking about is that they're not asking sales what they're using or what would help them solve the problem. So, one of the best things I think any customer marketer can do, whether they're new in a role or have been there for a while and are like experiencing a bit of stagnation or frustration around the way that their role is appreciated within the organization, is to go to the teams that are closest to the revenue and actually ask them what they need. Say, I understand that our company is working towards X goal. Maybe that's retaining more customers or launching a new product. And say, what can I do from a customer proof perspective to help you achieve that goal? And often it's not, I need more case studies. Often it's something as simple as, oh, it would be really great to have a customer quote speaking to exactly this. And maybe that customer marketer is a Peerbound customer and they can figure that out pretty quickly. Maybe that means going into your Gong recordings and looking for mentions of that pain point. I think like we're often putting the cart before the horse when we're just like producing case studies and not necessarily addressing the pain points of the sellers. And then this process magically allows you to figure out who your friendlies are within the sales organization, within the revenue organization. And your job should be to become their best friend.
Mm-hmm.
But like Chris said, you should also be giving them those insights that you're anticipating they need based on your relationship that you're building. And over time, you should be able to build an internal case study around the folks on that team that are using your customer proof points to the best of their abilities and selling more.
Have you heard any like feedback from sales teams around the enablement that has like really surprised you? And could you maybe give us some insights into that and how you've maybe applied it over time?
Yeah, I think for the most part, we often see people waiting to be told kind of like what they need or what is coming next or what would be helpful. But if you're not asking,
Mhm.
it probably, and if they're not asking you, if you're not asking them, first of all, what that basically means, I will say like 99.8% of the time, is that your sales team has their own system, their own deck. They have used internal stories to create something. Like I'm sure there is a mess behind the curtain that you do not want to know about that they are using to sell. And I think for me and my clients, what that teaches is to like, let's be flexible. Let's make sure that we can adapt our content beyond just a 3-page PDF case study into something that actually meets the needs of the sellers. But I think my biggest takeaway always in working with multiple clients is to just be curious. I think Chris's approach is absolutely the right approach. Like, let's be curious, let's be proactive, but let's not be proactive before being curious, because then you never know if what you're creating is just garbage, right?
Yeah. And Chris, I know we've worked a lot on sales enablement together, and you have taken a very hands-on approach and gotten into the weeds. Um, how about you? Have you heard feedback that's like really resonated with you from sales teams on like the
Yeah,
enablement?
I think what it really boils down to is having empathy for the team, and that this skill will serve you well no matter who you're trying to communicate with or what you're doing. But it's important to take yourself outside of your role and put yourself in the shoes of the rep. Um, because I found that even your biggest fans on the sales team, the ones that see the value of your programs, may actually have a really rudimentary understanding of how your processes work. I've had some of our top enterprise reps come to me asking for certain types of content, and I find that they are using a 3-year-old case study that they saved to their desktop, and it blows away your assumptions that when you release a new case study on Slack or something, you just assume everyone's digesting it and reading it and they'll know exactly where to find it forever, right? And so it really comes back to trying to ground yourself in thinking about how you're providing value. And in the case of sales adoption, how are you providing value for reps? Like, think less about how to orchestrate your program in the ideal way, and just answer the founding principles question of how can I help them do their jobs more effectively? How can I help them win deals faster? If you let that guide your approach, then that will lead to the best outcomes for them. It will lead to high adoption and recognition for your work.
Absolutely. And yeah, you got into some of the problems about this already, about like files saved on your desktop, like even if you have the best customer proof built for sales, like if the discoverability isn't there, it's not worth it. So
Yeah.
like Chris, how do you ensure that your sales team can find things from an enablement perspective?
Yeah, I think people are very logical and natural, and they will try and do the lowest friction thing possible to get what they need. And historically, this has meant that I act as what I call myself a human Slack bot. Someone will just come to you and ask where this case study is, or if we have this piece of content. But thanks to the advent of AI, we no longer have to do that. Now we have Slack bots that can answer those questions for us, and they can do it much more accurately than we can in our own our human repository, and they can answer it in 15 seconds. And then even better than having a Slack bot on demand is having that predictively, proactively put it in their inbox when they need it. So coming back to proactive proof, but our sales team has loved it, and we've had fantastic adoption. The stat that you shared with me, Gareth, is that 96.5% open rate is happening with Clari sales team after all of their calls with prospects. So after every call with a prospect, they get an email that discusses what they talked about, what those prospects' challenges were, and here's what you can use to help solve those challenges. Here's the content, the customers you can reference to move that deal along faster.
How has that impacted your role as like what you call a human Slack bot?
It certainly reduces the burden on me, just from a time saving standpoint. But I also think it's really helpful to have that third party source of truth, essentially. Like, I can trust that the Slack bot is going to do an exhaustive search of everything that we have and catalog that for the query, rather than just hoping that I remember correctly and I can answer that.
Yeah. How about you, Alexi?
I mean, kind of the same. Like, I'm obsessed with the way that CMA tech is changing. I think we've moved in the correct direction, which is towards proactive support for our teams. And I think your version, where we're matching the in progress opportunities with content that speaks to it, is perfect. But I think ultimately the real issue that we have with customer marketing and advocacy as a role is that we often solve the problem without having a conversation with the team that we're solving the problem for. So if your content is living in your CMS, doesn't matter if your sales team is living in Slack, you're still going to have Slackbot Chris responding to all of those requests with the link to the CMS, right? So I think we're moving in the right direction. It's just taking us a little bit of time to get there. And again, that enablement, that letting people know that, like, here's the process, here's how you get from A to B, and that proactive tech helps ease that burden of enablement on our side.
Absolutely. And Alexi, shifting gears a little bit just into the actual content of the sales enablement material itself, how do you make sure that customer proof feels trustworthy to both the sales rep and to the buyer and reader of the proof?
Yeah, I really focus on beyond just the benefits of the company's solution. I think the industry is moving in the correct direction. Most of our customer stories are moving away from challenge solution results. Here's how we beat competitor A, towards, like, here is Gareth. This is his persona. These are the challenges he was having at work, and here's how he solved it. And I think just putting that face and that name and that humanization behind it really is the correct move. But I also think we are moving towards better content and opportunities when we are integrating questions about thought leadership specifically. So one of my favorite plays is to have a customer story interview that includes opportunities for our advocates to talk about their thoughts and feelings on AI in the industry is a big one, depending on whatever industry you're in, right? Like, talk about how you are moving your team towards better adoption for AI solutions. And maybe in a roundabout way, that conversation lends itself to you selling your product and services, right? I think the more we make advocates seem like industry leaders, which a lot of them are, whatever their industry may be, the more legs that content gets, the more trustworthy it feels, and also the more authority we're really putting behind the content that we're creating, because we're saying, hey, this thought leader chose our solution, and here's why, and here's what they think, might be ahead for the industry, and hopefully we'll be along for that ride. And also update your stories. Like, I think this one feels really obvious, but a lot of people don't do this. Like, I think we get a good logo, we tell a good story with that logo. Maybe 6 months after implementation, maybe we include some thought leadership. But then, like, a year down the line, that customer has continued to evolve with us. Maybe they've added new tech to their stack that's not us, or maybe they've expanded with us. And all we need to do is like get a quote, and maybe we already have a quote from that customer because they've been on a webinar or whatever. And we just need to like pop that into the story. So the story becomes not a stale document, but like a living, breathing representation of our relationship with that customer.
There are definitely people on this call who we've reached out to multiple times this year to update the stories. But yeah, no, completely agree with you. Like the world of tech moves so quickly that like different things become important over time, and it's quick to update these stories. Like you can just add little bits and pieces here and there, but I don't think people do it enough, and you kind of end up with some old content on a desktop potentially just sitting there being used over and over again.
I
Uh,
think it's hard because like a story update doesn't communicate nicely into like a new story created KPI. So I think it becomes a little bit less of a priority, where we should really be shifting the idea behind KPIs, which I think is probably a conversation with Daniel later. He loves to talk about KPIs, towards like the story as a living thing versus a delivered asset that then ages.
yeah, absolutely. How about you, Chris? What are your thoughts?
I would definitely echo some of Alexi's points. I think the key to a trustworthy story is making it about the individual behind the organization. And if you think about it from the prospect's perspective, the buyer's perspective, if they're scrolling LinkedIn or scrolling your website, and they see that Apple did X with your product, or they see that Alexi Glover, your peer, did this with this product, which are they going to find more believable and enticing and inspired by? They want to build their careers and perform well and be recognized for that. And so I think it's not only more trustworthy, but on the advocate side, it's just more exciting to have those conversations with those advocates. And when you're talking about their own personal successes, and integrating that into your story. So that's definitely key. I think I definitely agree with Alexi's point that stories need to be updated when there's opportunities to do so. I do think, at least in the organizations I've been, we focused or we worry too much about the age of certain stories, um, and want to discard those even if they're still relevant. And I think like that's a trap that you can get into, which comes back to just the production-based KPIs of needing to turn out new stories constantly. Ensure that your customer stories are relevant to your buyers, that they're relevant to what you're offering, to the results that your buyers are looking for. But if you have a fantastic case study that's several years old, then by all means you should keep using it.
Absolutely. And a kind of a theme that has surfaced on this call is just the fact that you're obviously everyone's so busy these days, and like creating proof that is not going to be used is it's not really feasible. So with all of the demands that are there now, and all of the like requests that you're getting from sales team, I'm sure everyone's getting a million requests a day. How do you prioritize what you actually create first, and how do you keep the process of creating new proof efficient? And Chris, I'll go back to you on that.
Sure. Yeah, I am a big advocate of the waterfall approach of derivative content. So try and capture the largest usable asset that you can have. Say it's an hour long video interview, and you can cut that into a case study, video cuts for social, quotes for slides. Try and get as much value out of every asset. That should be standard practice, especially because I found that reps have different preferences on what they want to use based on their own styles, based on what stage in the conversation that they're at. Sometimes they want bite-sized content. And then I've had others ask for a even longer form case study than the 10-page white paper that they found on HighSpot, which shocks me. I don't know who's actually reading that, but they think that that their prospect wants to see that stuff. So be adaptive to all sorts of assets and just try and capture those large derivative assets that can be used. I also think that, again, with AI, it's a huge help in quickly creating assets that don't need to be polished necessarily. We don't need a case study for everything. And oftentimes, if a quote or a slide is all that's needed, you can generate that in minutes with internal documentation. And it allows you to quickly both serve sales needs, but not get stuck on the hamster wheel of really time-consuming, onerous content generation. Sometimes I've had reps ask me for like a slide that we don't have, and I can use Glean, and using a combination of all of the internal slide decks that we have and presentations, data from the account, I can generate a customer story slide in 5 or 10 minutes. And it's not going to be perfect and polished. It's not going to be permanently featured in a sales deck, but if it meets the need at that moment, then you can both serve those needs and also not make it time consuming for yourself.
Absolutely. Alexi?
Well, I've never heard it called waterfall approach, but I use the same approach and I love that. I've heard modular content or atomized content, and I think waterfall might be like the most fun version of those
I think I saw that
options.
from Devin Reed. I can't remember if he came up with that.
Oh, I
We'll have to fact check me on that after.
Well, we're just like singing from the same songbook because I totally agree. Like we need to be atomizing it, squeezing everything we can out of every piece of content. But one piece that I think a lot of people struggle with is they'll be given a list of like top brands from the CMO or targets from the CMO or kind of thing. And it's like big brands that might not be using your product in an interesting way, in an innovative way. Sometimes it's like it's part of their stack, but like one person in 1,000 people are using it. Like it's not a good story, right? It's just a good logo. And we see people like really pushing for that story to get across the finish line. And the way that I recommend we address that is to ensure that like all customer content that's in your pipeline has to be contributing to your company's overarching goals. So if your company in FY26 is selling specifically to like one persona or selling specifically one solution and really focusing on that one product in their lineup, and that story, while it's a good logo, doesn't meet that requirement, then it's an easy way to shift your priorities and make sure that you're really focused on what's driving better outcomes for the business, right? So that's one thing. I also really recommend tracking requests and specifically content requests because it's an easy way to surface trends. And so if your sellers are specifically looking for content that talks about X and all of your content talks about Y, it's an easy way to make that adjustment. And modular content or the waterfall approach is a great way to address that, slightly shifting the narrative, even though you're not necessarily producing a brand new full form customer story.
Nice. I love that.
Yes, sir.
Unfortunately, that is all of the time we have. That absolutely flew. Alexi, Chris, thank you both so much. And for everyone out there, stay tuned for the next session. Thank you.
Hi, everybody. My name is Sunny Manivanan. I'm the founder and CEO of Peerbound. We are the only AI native customer proof platform and proud to serve amazing customers at companies like AlphaSense, Canva, Gong, Gainsight. Thank you, Melanie, and a whole lot more. And you can see some of our customers back here in our wall of fame. Before we get into our chat about the all-important topic of the ROI of customer marketing, I wanted to introduce our amazing panel, Melanie Paddock at Gainsight and Daniel Pillay at Grafana Labs. Melanie and Daniel, welcome, and would love to hear a little bit more about you. Melanie, why don't you kick us off?
Absolutely. First of all, thank you for having me here. I'm so excited to share more with everybody today. My name is Melanie Paddock. I'm the Senior Manager of Customer Marketing and Advocacy at Gainsight. If you don't know what Gainsight is, it is actually a complete customer retention platform, bringing human, digital, and agentic programs together to help our best customers retain and grow their best customers. So my team specifically at Gainsight covers pretty much anything customer related. So our advocacy program named GainStars, customer stories, video testimonials, reference matching, game changer awards. We facilitate all of the awards for both conferences, both in Europe and in the US. We just launched a referral program, which is really exciting. And then number one, matching advocates to all business needs across the entire company for all 5 products. I have to say that I do have 2 amazing team members on my team. So Davielle Shorter, who is the manager of the Gainstar Customer Recognition Program, and then Shubra, who is my reference manager and operations specialist. So we're a mighty team of 3 over here at Gainsight.
Amazing. Thanks for that introduction. Daniel?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Daniel Pillay. I do basically what Melanie does, and we can move on from there. But in all seriousness, I'm Daniel Pillay. I am the director of customer advocacy at a company called Grafana Labs, the creators and purveyors of the Open Observability Cloud. Like Melanie, I have a team of 3, myself here in California, my amazing team members, Gina Lopez, who's based out of Europe and covers everything customer marketing from an EMEA and APAC perspective, and Paolo Johnson, who's based in Texas, who does the same thing from a day-to-day perspective in the States. Like Melanie, we do basically anything publicly or privately that involves our customers speaking about what they do with our software, whether it is on stage, whether it is in written format, whether it is in video format, or whether it is privately in between one customer to one or one customer to many. I spend a lot of my personal time not only, filling in where it needs to be on the team, but I am a co-chair of our customer advisory board, running meetings every other month, workshops, things of that nature, and the engine behind our Golden Grot Awards, which we literally just launched this week for celebration of what you can do with Grafana, the dashboard, both from a professional and personal standpoint. And that means I get to spend a lot of time making grot puns. So I love that.
That's amazing. Well, listen, great to share the stage with both of you. Let's talk about measurement. This is something that we have all talked about, I think, in several conversations, and it's exciting to go now share with the rest of our community. Let me ask you the first question, which is executives, I think, still think customer marketing is case studies, references, customer logos, cabs. And the way they define success, it seems to me, is just how many programs can you run? And we've all felt that pressure. And by the way, I think one of the clear things that AI has done is every C-level person now just believes that we should be moving 5 times as fast because AI can just do the other 80%, right? But what that's manifested into is just more and more programs. Let me ask you the multi-million-dollar question. How do you personally educate and just talk to leadership about modern customer marketing and, how do we actually impact the business? What does that process look like at your companies? Melanie, I'll start with you and then we'll go to Daniel.
Numbers, Sunny, it's all about the numbers. So saying to leadership that we publish 8 case studies in a quarter, that's not going to get them excited. You need to drill in deeper and you need to understand what impact those case studies had on the sales process or on retaining customers. So develop measurable and quantifiable metrics to present to leadership for the work that your team is doing. So not only did we do 8 case studies, but from those 8 case studies, we had a prospect stay on the site 10% longer, and then they ended up filling out a lead form that resulted in a demo request. Those are the type of numbers and metrics that leadership wants to hear in regards to the case studies, not just that they were published on your site. Again, another one that I can give you an example of, because I love realistic metrics to take back with me to my desk. So that's what I want to provide here today. So with references and reference matching, one simple question, if you asked your CRO, if you said, what if my team could not give you references this quarter? What do you think would happen? I bet their jaw would drop down to the floor, right? Because everybody knows the impact that references have, but how do you communicate that to leadership with statistics and with numbers? So for me at Gainsight, what we are showing is the time to match. So what that means is from the time a salesperson puts in a reference request, how quickly am I able to match that reference with a willing advocate to do the reference? And then how quickly am I able to get that scheduled? So time is money. The faster that I am able to get a reference scheduled is a faster sales cycle, a faster sales deal. Also, if you're able to show references, the reference impact on closed deals, that's just going to sweeten the pot even more. And that's one of my goals next year, to be able to look into that.
Amazing. Daniel, what's your take? I know you have several takes on measurement in general, but would love to hear
Yeah, I think I like to take a much broader look and step back when it comes to measurement, which is especially when it comes to executives, right? We as customer marketers, like obviously we interview for these jobs, right? The executives that we interview with, like they ask us, what do you think customer marketing should be? We tell them. And they say, guess what, Melanie? Guess what, Daniel? You're hired. Come run this department. We walk in the proverbial door and we sit down and hey, Mr. and Mrs. Executive, how do you think we should measure things? Right? Suddenly, like we've given away the power of this. Like they hired us for our skills and our way of running things. Yet we get in the door and suddenly we forget that we're actually really awesome at what we do, and we let them define the measurements that they want to see, which is how we kind of get to that starting point of like numbers, right? Like output, because that's what people who haven't been in customer marketing for a while or know like, oh, case study this or reference that, like just give me 10 of these and 12 of those. It's much more fundamental that we take something that, the way Melanie has packaged this up and walk in the door with that and say, no, this is the way we are going to run things. This is what we are going to deliver. It's going to take some time to get there. We have to build this base. We have to build this program. Sure, we can do some of these case studies on the side right now because AI allows us to do that. But if you're looking for value, if you're looking for impact, if you're looking for our team to help your teams get from point A to point B faster, that's going to take a few months, weeks, all these things to get these systems going. And if you set that expectation from the beginning, suddenly these executives are like, oh, right, you actually know what you're talking about. You interviewed, I got you. Two, you give yourself a little bit more leeway and runway to get that right as opposed to get it quickly.
Yeah.
Love that. Sorry, go ahead, Melanie.
Oh, I was just saying, yes, the expectation setting is huge. When I brought on Peerbound, immediately sales was saying, when do I get to use that Slack bot? How do I find customer content? But I had to go and enable them and have them understand the stages of the process to get Peerbound up and running and when it would actually be up and running. So that way they had realistic expectations. So I'm just agreeing with you 100% to communicate.
Yeah, exactly. And even going back to like production of case studies, like people who don't know the weeds of them are like, oh, a case study is just gonna show up like that, right?
Yeah.
It's like, no, it actually takes like
Well,
that's
the
why I always
process.
tell people like the longest one I've ever run is 18 months. From the moment I was introduced to the moment it was published, it takes time. Like not everything's gonna take 18 months, right? That was with a Fortune 100 company. It happens, but you tell them, you're like, oh my God, that actually takes a lot of work.
And there's only so much control we have as customer marketers on that final approval of the case study from the customer to get it up on the site. So that's also something that's really important to communicate to leadership, that I've gotten it through the full funnel, but we are getting pushback from the customer or it's in security review. So just because it's in your pipeline for the quarter doesn't mean it's necessarily going to be delivered, because there are humans on the other side of it that have to give that approval.
Exactly. And now you're getting into my little soapbox of like why we as customer marketers shouldn't be beholden to producing, numbers of case studies per quarter, because there's just so many like variables that are out of our control that you could do everything right. And then suddenly some cranky legal person at a different company that doesn't know exactly what's going on is like, actually, no.
Yeah.
That's a great situation that happens to way too many of us in the community. But listen, I think the parts that really resonated with me are about just taking the ownership and the agency for your own success metrics and communicating it proactively with leadership. I think that's such a very, very crucial thing. The easy metric is to say number of case studies, number of reference calls. But just because it's easy doesn't mean it's the right metric. And in fact, it actually puts you in a much worse position within the organization to just track those numbers just because it's easy. And Melanie, I love the metrics that you shared of, hey, are we improving the speed of the business? Are we actually increasing, are we actually accelerating revenue? And, I think the combination of saying, okay, I need to be upfront about this, certainly as a leader of this function, but my challenge is I think anybody in this function that at any level should be doing this, across the organization is saying, okay, how does this impact the business? And we are both in the good position of being able to come up with our own metrics based on what the company, values. But it's also a challenge given all the other things that you're immediately asked to do to show the value right away. So you're like, okay, I'm going to go do these things, but I also need to communicate why we're doing these things for the business. And that is, I think, where a lot of customer marketers tend to struggle. Listen, great topic. And I want to ask a little bit about, Melanie, you got us started on some of the metrics that you track, both across customer proof points, sales adoption, as well as references. What, in your point of view, are the most important outcomes that customer marketing is delivering for your company? And obviously, measurable is great, but even if they're more qualitative, I would love to know how do you think about this, and how do you communicate this within your company? And then Melanie, we'll start with you this time as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So a huge problem at Gainsight when I started is we have so much customer content everywhere. It's in different systems. It's in Coda, it's in Decks, it's in PowerPoints. But when a salesperson needs a case study for a quick moving sales deal, they don't have time to comb through everything we have in our repository. So one of my proudest moments at Gainsight is actually bringing Peerbound on for our sales team to be able to easily access all of the customer proof through a simple Slack query. So ironically, that Slack channel is one of our most used Slack channels at Gainsight, and reps are in there every day. It makes me so proud saying, show me case studies on X, show me customers who look like X. And they're using it. The engagement is there. And I have now delivered the keys to all the work that my team is doing, which feels phenomenal because all this work is being done in the back end, but being able to prove it and bring it in front of the company and in front of the sellers has just taken it to the next level of proudness. And usability. Now our content's there front and center for everybody to see what we're doing behind the scenes. Also super proud of the value that we're bringing. We have 400 global registered advocates in our Gainstar customer recognition program. So we did an official launch of this program back in 2024 at Pulse. We have expanded to Japan and into EMEA. So over 400 registered advocates that are willing and ready to do any sort of advocacy activity across Gainsight for our 5 different products. And then along with that, I have to bring up the brand awareness of those amazing Letterman jackets that you have all seen and loved on stage. Took off like wildfire. So the Gainstar program, if you hit platinum status, you are presented with a customized Letterman jacket on stage at Pulse with our leadership team. And boy, has that just set a buzz on fire with our advocates and with our customers. Everybody wants that. Serious FOMO. I get probably 10 emails a week of how many points do I have? How do I get that Letterman jacket? But it's working. People want in the program. They're excited about the program. So that's a really cool thing to see. And then just moving forward into 2026, I've talked about this a little bit, but I really want to double down now that I have my baseline programs in place. I want to be able to see how these programs are making sales cycles faster, being able to give percentages. A real life example would be if a case study is used in the sales cycle and another sales cycle it's not used, what is the percentage of deals closing using a case study versus not using a case study? So those are a couple examples of what I'm looking forward to doing next year.
Amazing. And by the way, on that last point of measurement of case study impact on revenue, we've got some cool things cooking for our customers, as you know. And very excited for the Peerbound measure module, which I think has been a dream of mine for a long time now. as a former marketer, and yeah, very excited to see what we're going to help you with as you go into next year.
I did forget one thing to say. The other big one for especially at Gainsight, retention. We're all about retention. Being able to track the retention of advocates versus non-advocates. So those net retention dollars for our advocates versus our non-advocates. So again, you can see everything that I do, I try to associate back to ARR or net retention dollars. And that really tells a compelling story to leadership.
Amazing. Well, Daniel, I can't think of a better segue to you because I know this is something you have preached is net dollar retention of advocates versus non-advocates. Why are you so passionate about this metric, man? Let's talk about it.
Yes, Sunny, NDR is one of the things that I want to anchor our metrics on. The reason there is if we talk about like money influenced directly, right? How much money does a single case study being read or a single reference call being had actually equal, right? What percentage are you putting on that? I mean, it's not like if you have this deal that's $1 million and in that process somebody reads a case study that you can say, guess what? We affected $1 million. Cool. That is like patently false because no one case study will equal that. There are so many different parts along the way. Now, reference calls might actually have an actual effect on that. But unless you're the deciding person, unless you're in their head, you don't know how much of the final deal was the reference call. Was it just like a checkbox on a corporate form that like, I must have a reference in order to sign this? Cool, that's probably like 1%. Or I'm really struggling with spending this $1 million. I need to talk to somebody who's been there before. That's higher. So any percentage of influence that you assign is made up, and you shouldn't be held to a standard that is a made up number. However, when it comes to NDR of advocates, that's actually like a number where you're just telling me like the work I am doing, the like programs that I am running have these people in it. Do they versus the regular customer population spend more money year over year? You're not saying there's a causation. You're saying there's a correlation in all of this white glove treatment, all of this special like things that they receive, like Letterman jackets or trips to speak at trips to speak at various events, or for our cab, like time with our executives. Those are perks that the normal everyday customer doesn't get. So is there a correlation of them spending more year over year? The cooler part about NDR, at least at Grafana, and I'm sure it's the same at Gainsight, our CFO reports on it every quarter. So if we start reporting on it, we are reporting on a number that gets reported up to the board. So suddenly our team is speaking the executive language, and we can talk across the business of like, hey, look at our work and what we're doing and how it affects your bottom line.
Yeah.
That's really cool. Well, listen, I think really compelling arguments for NDR being a core metric, especially the last argument about the CFO reporting on it, which again, I think, Melanie, one of the things I loved about your metrics is that I can almost point to the C-level executive that will care about that at the highest level of the company. And anytime anybody at the company talks about that metric, as long as the sort of logic checks out of how you're influencing it, that's a big gold star in their book. And no better metric, Daniel or Melanie, than NDR on that front, because especially over the last couple of years, right? Every SaaS company is now looking at this metric and saying, can we grow the install base in an efficient way? Now that finding new business is not, it's not as easy as it was 4 years ago when everybody was buying software for everything.
And I think to add on to it, I think Melanie also brought these sort of like softer anecdotal metrics up, like velocity, right? And it's not just like velocity to deals, it's velocity of how quickly can we as a team deliver on certain things. Melanie talks about the case study. Like we were just going through a new process of like AI interviewing, and we discovered that we could go from like somebody raising their hand to a first draft written in 51 hours. And we at the same time we're talking to somebody via email and said, hey, could we like schedule something? It took more than 51 hours to even schedule something. And so like we have these sort of moments of, are we as a team helping whoever we're working for in that one moment get from point A to point B faster? If we are working for ourselves at that moment, we check that box really damn quickly with that 51 hours. If it's delivering a reference like Melanie was talking about, being able to fulfill that in a certain SLA, we are doing that. Are we delivering proof to people quicker than they could before? Yes. So every day when our team is working on something, it's like ask ourselves, is what we're working on helping people get from point A to point B faster? If yes, keep working on it. If no, ask yourself why. And if no, then stop it.
And Daniel, I have a tip to share with you to go from 51 hours to 90 seconds. That's what I was able to do this past quarter. So utilizing Peerbound, we do all of our recordings for our customer case studies, and then we generate a draft, the initial draft within Peerbound in 90 seconds. So 52 days to 90 seconds, that would be a great metric for your next QBR for leadership.
Yeah. I would love that, and that is sort of where we're going. This one was actually really interesting because this was an interview that we weren't even a part of. It was kicked off after an event in Brazil where we don't speak Portuguese. We have this tool that allows us to conduct AI interviews in Portuguese. This one was just eye-opening of like, I don't understand Portuguese. My team doesn't understand it. We don't speak it. We don't write it. But somehow we were able to produce this in 51 hours and then get somebody at the company who does speak and be like, can you check this out for us?
Yeah, that's great.
Your good friend Chat GPT turns out to be a good Portuguese speaker, and perhaps
I don't know what you're talking about, Sonny. I know nothing about this. Everything hand wave.
That's cool.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, listen, for the audience, one of the things that Daniel and I think we have a slight difference in opinion is on the importance of some of these other metrics, like, reference calls and customer stories. And this is not NDR. I think all three of us agree is such a core metric and important to every level of the company, especially, at the C level. But, my thesis, and this is not quantitative, I should, qualify that. But my thesis is that we're entering this world where there's going to be so much AI slop in marketing and selling. And I'll give you guys a couple of examples from my world. I've already found 3 company websites where the copy on those websites looks exactly like ours. And the only difference between our website and their websites is that they have no customers listed on the website. And they have no customer proof points or stories or anything like that. And so as I think about this world that we're all entering and what makes a sales experience really great for a buyer, I really think customers, being embedded into that experience is a huge, huge differentiator. Whether it's, hey, you're, searching on a search engine and you see relevant quotes or whatever it is, or all the way on the other side where you're taking a reference call and that customer, reminds you of the challenges that you're trying to solve. I think all of those things really matter. Now, where I do agree with you, Daniel, is that that's harder to measure the relative impact of those activities on the final deal. And I think that was really your core point, which I, do agree with. But in many ways, I think this function is a storytelling function. And again, this is qualitative, but I'm a big believer in storytelling as a differentiator, for every company that wants to win. But yeah, any thoughts?
Yeah, I think, Sonny, you're not wrong. And don't get me wrong, I love what I do. I love seeing the customer proof out there. I just think the way we are measured on it is currently is too restrictive to the power that it has, right?
Totally.
I literally, this week, I literally just got done supplying quotes for we're revamping our website. We're doing all of these things and putting all of these quotes front and center on these places. So I completely agree that part is there. But I also think this goes back to how we're measured is do the constituencies that you're serving to put customer proof on those websites, that's not the sales team. That's the product team. That's the content team. So if you're only beholden to you have influenced X deals from the sales team, you're actually narrowing the effect that you have. If I can help, if our team can build systems and supply proof to product marketing, to product, to content, to executives, to analyst relations, we have done our job, but
Totally.
we are looking broader than just this narrow go-to-market function.
Yeah, totally.
That's exactly it with customer proof, making it available throughout the entire organization. Because to your point, Daniel, it is not just the salespeople that need the customer proof. Product marketing, Events, sometimes even events are in the Peerbound Slack channel asking questions about customers because they're trying to identify speakers for their next speaking engagement. So by making it available throughout the entire company and not just pigeonholing it to sales and to metrics, I agree that's the way to do. Your customers are your best sellers. We all know that. Customer advocacy is so important. They're your absolute best sellers. They're going to praise your products and do it in a way that is authentic, and you'll see the results from that.
Yeah, awesome. I want to talk about measurement for a little bit longer, but I also, the topic that's been on everybody's mind in 2025 is just AI. And we're not going to, this is not one of those browbeating AI pitches, but I want to take a step back and ask, what has been the impact of AI on your team and function? And I see several flavors of AI's impact on companies, from, okay, we should all be using AI, to you should be building your own agents, and everything sort of in between. What's been the messaging from your leadership on AI? And Daniel, this time I'll start with you, and then Melanie, I'd love to hear your thoughts on what has changed for you in this function because of it.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's sort of like our marketing leadership has always been very much of the mind of like, AI is not going to take your job. Somebody using it correctly will. And so how do you like make AI a first-class citizen in everything that you think, like every problem you approach? Is there something that you can automate away so that you can do the thing that the human in a loop needs to do, right?
Yeah.
An AI cannot prepare a speaker for the stage, right? They can listen, but they cannot give them all of the human touch. They cannot help them. But they could, to Melanie's point, create a case study in 90 seconds, right? Like those are the things that we want to, I don't know if AI is a verb, but we're just going to use it now, AI away, if you will,
Yeah.
to help you get that time back so you can spend it in the most impactful way that only a human can.
Yep.
I think that's one of the areas that we're really diving into. And like you said, Sunny, it like runs the gamut of like use it in your day-to-day life, or and like Gina's actually doing this right now, building AI agents to help people find both public and private proof and sort of connect the dots and all of these different things. So, there's time, there's space. Like, if you want to do this, we will like figure out a way to give you that time and space in Grafana to do that. So the sort of build first ethos is big at our company. But I think there's also the like everyday AI-ness, if you will. And I think I just used it as an adjective as well. So we're just going to use AI as everything in high school English.
I love
That's
it.
right. Love it.
We are all in on AI. We're building out agents for Gainsight. I also am all in on AI for the tools that I am using, which I can give a couple of examples of. But after I say, I am not scared about AI, because in our jobs with advocacy and building customer advocates, it is all about relationships. If you talk to a group of my Gain Stars, they're not there for the AI bot reaching out to them. They're there because they know Dabby, they know myself, they know Shubra, they know Gainsight, they know formerly Nick Mehta, now Chuck. They are there for the people and for the connection. How I use AI and how I visualize AI helping is taking away the repetitive tasks that used to take up so much of my day, and streamlining things like the case study process. So instead of a draft in weeks, we get it within 90 seconds. And by using that process, I was able to get the story draft back from our writer within 21 days when it was taking up to 60 days, by that initial pass coming back within 90 seconds. So that's huge. That shows with those numbers that we are more efficient. We are going to be able to turn out more case studies, which then we'll have to attribute revenue to. But and then also with Champion, like with reference management, we had an 80% decrease in our time to match. So that's just huge. By using AI through different partners, it is making my job more streamlined, and I'm able to focus on the more important things like the strategy and taking programs to the next level, launching a referral program, et cetera, et cetera. So I think all customer marketers should lean into AI and really see how you can best use it to take away the mundane parts of your job, the spreadsheets, the stuff that's not as fun as being in front of people and doing human connection.
Love that. But listen, I want to thank you both so much for navigating customer marketing leadership, navigating AI, navigating SaaS, navigating all these crazy things that are happening in our world, and taking the time out of your, very busy schedules to join me. And I think more importantly, just really talk to the customer marketing community, which, I think we all know is fast moving, especially in this AI era. And you are running some incredible programs. You get to work with some amazing people on your teams, not your companies. And it is such a delight and a privilege to learn from your experiences. So huge thanks to both of you. Thank you, Melanie, and thank you, Daniel. And
Thank you.
To the audience, stay tuned for the next session.
Hi, everyone. We are at the last session of the day, and it's going to be an exciting one. We're going to be talking about AI for customer marketing. If you missed my intro earlier, my name is Natalia, and I am the VP of Marketing at Peerbound. And before we get started into our chat, I wanted to introduce my co-panelists. Jane Menyo at Gong and Courtney Doletsky at G2. I hope I said that right. We both have the Polish last name, so I always pronounce it with the Polish accent.
Yep.
Jane actually is on the wall behind me. I know all the panelists. One of them is up on the wall. So Courtney, you will be up there soon. But yeah, Jane, I'd love to, have you start with the intros.
Yeah, amazing. Well, thanks so much for having us here today, Natalia. This is a very exciting topic, so we can't wait to dive in. I'm Jane. I lead our solutions marketing over here at Gong, so really helping us better understanding all of the different use cases and applications for all of our customers across our product portfolio. I've been in B2B tech pretty much my entire career, so I've worn a lot of different hats in marketing, including customer marketing, and really a lot of the ways that has shaped for me the way that you can be really close to your customer and how powerful that can make a lot of your marketing, both from an expertise perspective, as well as how you can bring a lot of that proof to market. So yeah, excited to talk about this topic today.
Great. Courtney, you want to give us an intro?
Yeah, I have a very similar background to Jane, actually. So I'm really excited that we're both here today. I've spent most of my time doing B2B marketing, but also very fluent with B2C. So really just passionate about the full customer life cycle, how channels and program marketing really impacts that and makes it meaningful, and unifying teams and audiences around shared goals that really drive value and results. And I've only been doing that at G2 for less than a month. So really excited to kind of walk through it today, both from my own perspective, but also what we're doing here at G2.
They threw you right in the deep end. On this webinar.
Love it.
Love it. Well, just to kick off our convo, I think, the reason we picked this topic is because there's a lot of fear around AI, a lot of confusion around AI. A lot of times we're scared to ask the question about what it all means for our careers and our skill sets because we think everybody else has it figured out, which is definitely not the case, but hopefully we can share a few tidbits in this conversation that will help you in your day-to-day. A wild stat that I heard from Graphite study recently is that half of online content is now created by AI. And that number was actually even higher and it's gone down. It's plateaued a little bit. And I think it's because performance of a lot of the AI content that's been produced to date has been really subpar. And there's sort of like a revolt taking root against AI slop. I think buyers are really seeking authenticity and, this sort of intimacy economy, as some experts call it, which I think puts customer marketers in a great seat to deliver around that. I think this conversation is specifically important because AI can be slop, but it can also empower marketers to really create authentic experiences at scale and find a lot of those advocates in a way that we haven't been able to do in the past. So my first question for both of you is, there's so many AI tools out there. I mean, it is so overwhelming. Like every day I'm like, should I be demoing this or that? How do you decide which ones to actually adopt or even look into? Like, what criteria do you use in your role? Jane, I'll let you kick it off.
Yeah, awesome, Natalia. And yeah, that's such a fascinating stat and sort of trend that we're seeing. And I think maybe just to sort of add into that, I think we are seeing not only, consumers getting smarter about making sure that they're indexing for the right kinds of content and learnings, but also a lot of the algorithms that we're using for search. And so that no longer includes just, the Googles of the world. We're also seeing that like ChatGPT and all of the LLMs are now some of the predominant search engines, and they're getting a little bit more sophisticated of using more reliable resources. So, G2 for us is one of those areas where we see like a lot of opportunity to really lean in on authentic content. So I think speaking more broadly, when I think about AI tooling and, solutions that are out there, it really is that sort of technology that can empower us to do our jobs better. And so, for me, I started out in actually like demand gen and a lot of like marketing automation work. And like back then, like Marketo was like the big shiny new like game changer in the space, right? And so kind of like leading with a lot of this mentality of, hey, if there's something that I'm doing that's incredibly repetitive in my job, or I'm constantly beating my head against a wall over, how can I look to potentially like some AI solutions to actually alleviate a lot of that pain? And so I think for me, it's kind of starting with a little bit of that problem of like what you're solving for, and then working back into how am I going to go find the right solution and thereby like provider that'll actually accomplish that. I think if you try to just go out widely and say, hey, it's in a corporate mandate, I have to drive a like AI solution now, you'll probably get a little bit lost in actually like what you're going to be able to accomplish. But knowing that you have a pain and that there's a clear goal of what you're trying to solve for, I think you can find a lot more success there.
Yeah,
Courtney,
I totally agree. I mean, you hit the nail on the head, and that's exactly how I feel. Going back to Natalia, what you said about a lot of people just having a lot of concern about what does AI mean for us. I really just see it as a tool, right? It's helping to drive efficiency, what I like to say, working smarter, not harder. And the ways that we can leverage that, like Jane was mentioning, it's really based on the problems that you're trying to solve and what those challenges are in order to adopt the right product to help us move faster. And for me, just not even by nature of being here at G2, but voice of customer is super impactful to me just as a marketer, but even as an individual. So I often turn to other colleagues that I've worked with in the past or other, brands and partnerships that I've had and say, hey, what are you guys using? What are you adopting? And what kind of success are you seeing from that? And I think that's really been where I've seen the most success in adopting new tools.
Customer proof.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, and I think it's so interesting, Jane, go back to your point, how there was like, I remember a few months ago, like companies were like, part of our reviews at the end of the year is going to be like how many AI tools you're using, and which is such a silly way to go about it instead of like what are you actually solving with those AI tools.
Yeah.
So moving on, I think traditionally, as customer marketers, we've relied really heavily on interviews and surveys and like going out to customers and expecting them to sort of give us that sentiment. But with AI, we have so many more ways to actively listen to what they're saying and not just relying them on telling us. What impact have you seen AI have on customer marketing? Like, what are some innovative ways that people, like companies, are leaning into AI to achieve these new results?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the use cases and applications for AI are so broad, right? And there's so many different ways that you can really like go out and approach it from any one perspective. When I think about it from, broadly speaking within revenue orgs and revenue teams, I think what's really fascinating is how we've actually been able to take essentially natural language and turn that into now data, right? So if ChatGPT was trained on, millions of YouTube videos, and that's how it started to learn language skills and understand what people are saying and what the intents and the outcomes are out of that. It's similar, like how can you go better understand your world by taking like truly like language, but now we can actually leverage that as more like data points. And I think that's where like the signals component comes in. If it's not as much just hard-coded fields and ways that we actually need to be able to go out and quantifiably organize ourselves, we can actually go in this more nebulous world, which for customer marketers has always been the area of struggle, right? You're sort of floating the world between being very relationship driven, as well as trying to be more aligned with the traditional marketer who's much more organized based on KPIs and results and outcomes. And so I think in this way, it's as the markets are evolving and teams are evolving, you're starting to see a little bit more of that shift for customer marketers. And so for me, I think it's really the impact on customer marketers is the way that you can actually go out and look for more signals than we traditionally have had in the past, of more limited fields of health data or like NPS scores, and actually go try to find more moments of like true sentiment that allow you to move faster or a little bit more deeply. Curious,
Yeah, definitely.
Courtney, too.
Yeah, you perfectly segued into kind of my feedback about that. We really try to capitalize on that natural language and just the overall positive natural sentiment that our reviewers provide to our sellers and our customers. So shameless plug, but G2, we really try to leverage AI to capture and convert what would typically be that unstructured kind of black hole feedback, especially from calls, and turn it into really meaningful review content. Not only looking for like that positive sentiment again, but just being able to provide more credibility and volume back to our customers. And it's been really powerful because not only does it significantly reduce the friction of review collection, and nobody has time these days with how crazy just life is, and adding AI into the mix of already being tight on resources and bandwidth, the more we're able to kind of use AI to reduce that friction and really drive that data collection, the more able we are to have a lot of these customers capture the content that they're looking for and be able to put it out into the world for, in our case, buyers.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like the listing part and making it really easy for people is so important because I don't know, some people are like reviewer takers and some people aren't. So you're able to just get intelligence from folks that maybe, especially like C-level, that maybe wouldn't have filled something out before.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really, it's just such impactful data that, I mean, you had dozens of people before manually going through, making phone calls, taking quotes down, and now you can really just do it in a matter of seconds, which is really amazing.
Yeah, definitely. Jane, since you're at Gong, and you're probably listening to a lot of calls, what's something AI has surfaced from customer calls that like completely changed how you thought about customer proof?
Yeah, and it's funny. I'll have to admit I don't listen to a lot of calls myself, actually. And maybe hot take here. But I would say that I think what is really, again, like compelling about how AI can actually ingest conversation data more broadly. So whether that's calls or emails or text and that kind of information, those exchanges between a revenue team and a customer are sort of gold for a customer marketer, right? And those are the pieces that you're really looking for. So when I think about the way that we can use Gong's technology more broadly, the ability for our own sort of revenue graph behind our AI technology that actually ingests a lot of those conversations, you're actually now able to use AI tooling to get more aggregate information about an account at wide. So for me, what's really exciting is that ability to actually then go and look and say, let's go actually like better understand an insight from an account. I'm going to go and I'm going to find, why did they buy? Who's the key stakeholder? What are sort of the key use cases they have for our product? What outcomes are they driving for? And from there, you're actually, when you're going to engage either with the account team to like get introductions to the customer or actually directly with the customer itself, it's less about that learning, that kind of coordination process. And it's really empowering you to come in with all of this intel that you're really just more so focusing on the relationship building and actually just to get that proof on the record by having so much more knowledge at your fingertips.
Yeah, I love that. I also mentioned this before, but I have used it to sort of look for specific signals. Like I led international marketing, we were looking for specific regional info, and it's really nice to be able to get very specific with it.
Yeah, and again, like my role is sort of solutions marketing, so it's understanding personas and yeah, industries and regions too. And so actually taking like groups of data and then actually starting to better understand like kind of the trends behind those. There's a lot of power of what you can understand that's really relevant and targeted to your business.
Yeah, definitely. I know we all have access to so many data sources like feedback from G2 reviews, the sales calls, case study interviews. But given like the volume, although it really feels like sometimes you don't have access to a lot of things, you really do. But given the volume of it all, and historically none of it's sort of living in one house, how can marketers think about using AI to sort of consolidate all that data, identify advocates across all these channels, and really turn that into actual revenue?
Yeah, maybe Courtney, I'll start, and then if you want to follow. But I think when I think about customer proof done well from a marketer's perspective, and again, looking at it from the lens of sort of the full funnel of like all the ways that you can activate customer proof, for me, I've always sort of believed that the best customer proof is just pervasive. It's in all of your marketing collateral. It's in every sales pitch deck. It's on all pages of your website. And I think that's definitely the trend that we see today is people leveraging customer validation throughout a lot of their content and campaigns. But the good and the bad of that is it leaves you at a place, especially from a traditional way of tracking impact tied to marketing, is you're peanut buttered. And so because you're peanut buttering all of your content, you have no direct ties into influence, which is a core way that a lot of marketers operate. And so for me, I think it's the good and the bad of it is like, I'm not going to put a gate on my case study just because I need the credit. Like it's not the right thing to do for the business. And so you're actually looking for like different ways that you can measure the impact and the success of your work. And a lot more I think about in terms of like, how are we better optimizing conversions? How are we better optimizing performance within the campaigns because we have the proof, or perhaps better proof, maybe that bigger logo versus, ways that we can sort of elevate our opportunities. And then also too, a lot of it is really like looking to the sales side. And so when we see the place where customer proof in our business, at least, sits most strongly, it's a lot of the time in helping us get that validation to the close. And so we're looking to how do I better enable our sellers to have the content and the things that they need to be able to do their jobs and serve up more targeted content to them. I think in a lot of ways, like we've traditionally had, all of our content, we spent a lot of cycles to get like all of the case studies and all of a slide, high spot pages with like every page organized, and we didn't know if anyone was using it, right? We get anecdotal feedback from sellers, right? Now, and plug for Peerbound, a lot of that we have empowered on the back end with Peerbound, and our sellers can actually go and leveraging our Slack bot query to find exactly the most relevant piece of proof that they need and triage based on like what's existing versus what we may be able to provide them blinded today. And that gives us more, not only availability to help serve them better and know what's working, but we also know where we have gaps and where we need to be focused more on building more.
Yeah, definitely. Actually, just a small note on that, we'll pop it in the chat, but we just did a query of all the like Peerbound Slack bots queries from sales and like analyze what they search for the most. And it's super interesting just to look sort of at that data from back of house. Courtney, what about you? Tell us more about how you do that at G2.
Yeah, I mean, obviously reviews is the bread and butter of our business, right? It's really the heart of G2. So we focus very heavily on how we can improve the time and effort it takes for someone to leave a review for our customers. And we're continuously optimizing, whether that's a manual review, an AI assisted review, just making it easier for them to submit what our customers has kind of deemed as required. But also enabling them with tools that help them with their calls and their text, like Jane was mentioning, so that they can aggregate everything and put it together and they can generate their own reviews. That's been a really big growth area for us recently. And in addition to some of the custom reports that we provide where we're combining our own data with AI market research and providing more comprehensive insights back to our customers that we typically, would spend months doing, we can now do it in a couple of days, right? To help provide actionable insights to help meet their business needs.
I love that. Create your own review. Actually, one of the reasons I really wanted to have G2 on this webinar is I think facilitating like customer feedback on review platforms in the past has all been about achieving leadership status. I think as marketers, we know we put that little badge in our sales decks and announce it on LinkedIn. But I think now those reviews are actually affecting whether buyers are even discovering you in AI search. I mean, I've searched, for Peerbound, and it's like half the results are G2 reviews. And I think this is fascinating. And I think it's a game changer in how customer marketers can think about their review programs and the value that they're delivering to their organization. So, yeah, I'd love to sort of get your thoughts on how you think that's really changing customer marketers' behavior around that.
Yeah, I love this question. We are definitely seeing that a lot right now, and we have a lot of case studies coming out about just how a lot of our customers are using their review content to help power AI and LLMs. And they favor all of the natural language and tone, like we've been talking about, conversational FAQs, question-based headings, anything listicle that's easy to digest. So I think for customer marketers, it really just reinforces the importance of facilitating customer feedback, and making sure that it's more digestible content, which is exactly what G2 provides and how we're powering a lot of those search results. So really continue to be keen on driving voice of customer and having a constant flow of what those reviews are and making sure that they're added to your G2 profiles. Just continually appearing, that helps us continually appear in both SEO, but as that kind of starts to dwindle down and AI continues to increase, making sure that you're showing up prominently there.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because just going to our next question, I think there is a sort of new KPI coming out for customer marketers where they're actually driving growth, and can creatively drive growth through those reviews. So how are you both thinking about measuring the impact of AI or like whatever you're implementing, all those tools? Are there any interesting ways you're seeing companies implement new marketing KPIs? Like, you want to show your managers AI has done X, Y, and Z. So Jane, I'll let you kick off this one.
As the dust has settled on, what are some of the AI use cases and the early value props and like the ways that we will use it, particularly as marketers, I do feel like a lot of that is still sort of centering on productivity elements and ways that we are driving more automation and augmentation to really help us scale our work and the impact there. And so I think that from the most part, what I've really been seeing, I would say kind of boils down into like more productivity focus. And so I think for people when they're thinking about looking towards what kinds of measurements you could use to show your impact and how AI is solving for you, I think it's to start small and just to start really closely looking at some tangible metrics of what are you actually like, have a thesis, go back to like your high school science, chemistry class. If you're like me, that's probably as high as your science level went. And you started with a hypothesis, right? Like I have an idea and I want to see if this is correct, right? And so we did that, and I'll just give the example, and it sort of serves with Peerbound and G2 in this use case, but ways that we are actually leveraging Peerbound to help us take Gong conversations and turn those into recommended reviews for our customers and actually drive reviews on our site. And so, in a first pilot that we ran, we actually saw a significant impact there from the types of reviews that we were getting. The reviews were, over 2.5 times longer than our traditional review. So again, going back to the impact of what that means for SEO and AEO, how that actually will serve us to be shown up in a lot of those places. But it also had twice as many product mentions and 5 times more value prop mentions. So the depth of the review content that we were able to get by serving up just the kinds of conversations that customers had had with us already directly back to them led to a lot more depth. And so I think that was an example that we found of, hey, we're using an AI tooling set to be able to help us better drive an impact. And therefore, we believe that this is going to have more longer term business impact. I don't know how I'm going to quantify like the SEO value on that yet today. So that's like a bigger, meatier piece, but I do know at least from the quality of the reviews that we can see, that piece has definitely gone up.
Yeah, and fun fact, I drafted a review for G2 for Jane in Peerbound, and it was very in-depth. Like, it just makes it so easy. Just send it over, and the customer doesn't have to do all the work. But
It was awesome. It was so cool to be on like the recipient side of that experience,
Yeah.
Yes.
Courtney, how are you thinking about it?
Yeah, I mean, similar to Jane, I think, there's just so much hype, like we've mentioned, around AI and what is it doing? How is it helping? There's still that human element that is absolutely necessary when using AI tools. And I think most companies know it's super critical to stay current and adopt AI tools throughout their business. But I think the biggest challenge right now is really being able to measure that impact. And I know we talked about this offline before we kicked off, but I kind of think about it going back to when social media marketing, like that was not a thing yet, right? I started my career out in direct mail before like really digital marketing took off, and then we had social, and it's really hard to quantify what the impact is of an Instagram story or Instagram interactions, right? You can track engagement with the post or a story, but how does that really impact your bottom line? Was a very gray area for a long time. And for some companies, it really still is. So I kind of think back to that. And part of why I think we're seeing a huge brand marketing resurgence right now, you have to really maintain your visibility. You need to constantly show up wherever your audience is. And you just really need to really market yourselves, honestly, in this day and age. And I think the more we kind of get used to these tools and how users are using them and what they're using them for, then we'll be able to kind of quantify the impact a lot better and more accurately. But I would say in general, it's looking at SEO traffic versus AEO traffic and seeing what that trend is, and then looking at your bottom line and how does that kind of shape up, and what do we need to do as an organization to help our product, kind of evolve to that data trend.
I love that comparison to brand marketing, because when I think about, big brand marketing campaigns like out of home and other ones, the way like we always measure that is to see like the website traffic go up, right? It's not a direct correlation, like nobody clicked that a home ad, obviously, but you can sort of infer something. So I think that's going to be the challenge, is how are we inferring some of these results? And I think, it's not just about brand marketing anymore, right? It's authentic brand marketing. And that's what I think customer marketing brings to the table in a totally different new way that hasn't been really thought about in the past as valuable as it is today. All right. Well, we're almost at time. So to close the session, I think there's a lot of AI tools that are coming out that are really exciting. And I love like these sort of roundups that people do of what they're looking at. What's the most exciting AI capability or tool that you've seen recently that you think has really, the potential to help customer and product marketers?
Yeah. Well, my turn for a shameless plug here on Gong, although I think I've been speaking to it at length, but we just launched a new feature called AI Builder, which is pretty exciting. And I think, again, for a lot of customer and product marketers, similar, just like ways that you can actually go and build a lot of like sales or enablement or content based on all of the conversations that your customers are already having. And so for me, it's really impactful to think about how we can actually start to take a little bit more segmented conversations that we're having with our customers. So let's look at financial services and the types of conversations that we're having there. How can I better scale up the creation of a discovery guide or a questionnaire that we can use to really make that grounded in something real and try to drive a little bit more performance out of that.
We'll have to dig into that. What about you, Courtney?
Yeah, I mean, plugging into G2, we have a really cool AI assisted tool where we do take phone calls and, help the customer then create a script for a review. I think that's amazing. Like we've been talking about, just really cuts down on a lot of time and helps streamline that review volume. But I'm an email marketer at heart, and I nerd out over that kind of stuff big time. And I recently demoed an AI tool that integrates the design and marketing platforms to help streamline localization. So for companies that are sending in multiple markets and multiple languages, it takes all of your visuals and text, automatically pushes the content into unique campaign templates, whether it's email or even like SEO content through like WordPress. And it really helps turn SLAs from like weeks and months, depending on the type of campaign, into literally seconds. And that's where I just kind of nerd out over AI. I think that's amazing that there's tools and functionality out there that can really help customer marketers do their jobs quicker.
Okay, so that's all the time that we have for this session. I think my biggest tip for the audience is allow yourself to wander of AI tools so it becomes a lot less scary. Thank you, Jane and Courtney, for joining me today. This was an amazing conversation, so insightful. And thank you to everybody else in the audience for tuning in as well. A recording of this webinar will be emailed to you with some additional resources. And then, we'd love to ensure that we're delivering valuable insights and future events in the next year. So please take our short survey. Let us know your feedback about today's sessions, about what you want to hear about in the future. And we know it's the end of the year. So from all of us here at Peerbound, we wish you a happy and healthy holiday and new year. And we'll see you in 2026. Bye.